Hello, and welcome to another edition of Terabit Talks. I'm Chris Sass. I'm your host. And as always, I want to thank Nokia for making this possible, sponsoring us, and getting us out here today. This is our second episode. These are live conversations where we try to take you into everything happening in data center and get you a little bit of insight of what's going on behind the scenes. These are live conversations. We hope that you are able to engage. Last time we had great questions along the way. At any time during today's interview, feel free to drop questions in the chat and we will try to respond to those in real time. Today's topic is going to be a bit different. We're going to bring in Scott Brookshire, CTO and co-founder of OpenColo. Scott, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Chris. Nice to be here.
I am super excited to have you here because you guys have done some innovative stuff. Now, I want to start out by saying that Terabit Talks is sponsored by Nokia, but we generally are not a Nokia extension of Nokia. We're not here to pitch Nokia. I know the solution we're going to talk about today, you did use Nokia as your vendor, so that happens to be the case today. But for audience members, don't think that we're only going to be talking Nokia here. We're going to talk about any issues that go on behind the scenes. So, Scott, before we start, not everybody's going to know who OpenColo is. Why don't we start by who OpenColo is and what it is you all do?
Sure. Yeah. So, again, I'm Scott Brookshire, CTO, co-founder of OpenColo. We're a boutique data center here in Santa Clara in Silicon Valley. We're all about customer first mindset, trying to do no harm on all our customers, and basically, like, we're basically delivering quality internet services and colocation services to our VIPs, and love for anyone who's in the area to come out for a tour. Love to give it to you.
So you're a boutique firm, is I think how we would describe you. And I think you came up from the gaming industry. How did you end up starting this
Yeah.
niche?
So a long time ago, we were doing some like shoutcasts, or we did a lot of streaming video way back in the day where we were using other people's data centers. We still use other people's data centers today too, but primarily we did a bunch of bare metal, we did a bunch of colocation services, and over the years we were able to get tons of customers who depend on us, and eventually we were able to purchase a building and then be owner operator of our own data center here in Santa Clara. Which is pretty awesome because it's a very expensive endeavor. And I've always had this vision like 20 years ago, like, man, if we can ever do our own data center, like, I like to do things a little bit different. So thus the name OpenColo. We wanted to be like transparent about like what we're doing, how we're doing things, and just give like a lot of visibility to our customers, and then really listen to our customers, make sure they feel like they're valued versus just another number in the system for them.
All right. So you use the word visibility. And I think the topic that we're going to talk about is a bit of visibility into what's happening. Why don't we talk a little bit of things that you're doing to see what's going on and how your instrumentation works? Because I think what you're doing is a little bit cutting edge.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, like probably a lot of people listening in, we've been doing networking for a really long time, and we probably started with some very questionable switches back in the day because we just had to make it work. So as we kind of refreshed and migrated things, we had an opportunity to do a full refresh when we moved into our new data center. And one of the things we're looking at is how do we get real-time visibility to what's happening on the switch without like actually like having a CPU load issue or some sort of limitation of like controllers and stuff like that. So we basically built, we used GNMI to basically do real-time streaming telemetry from the switches that we have and routers, so we can get state of like BGP sessions, hardware state as well. Any sort of alarms, like we can see those things in real time. One of the big things what we also looked at doing is trying to figure out how to deploy things much faster and more efficiently. So when we get like new switches, for example, they all come in a box, like we've never seen them before. We have an idea what we're going to configure for like basic like management and loopback addresses and little simple things like that. So we figured we could basically deploy with ZTP a full configuration for every single switch, even though we don't know what that specific switch is going to do. We know there's like a baseline for everything, and we have typical uplinks for every single type of switch. So we have a basic format for lots of things. So, zooming out real quick, to get things deployed quickly, you got to find your mistakes before you go into production. So for us, like we'll do full configuration deployment. A data center technician will rack that switch, get things cabled up, powered up, and instantaneously we'll basically get all of our tools operating instantly because we're streaming telemetry in real time to our Grafana instances. And we can see like a light level problem on a specific optic. We can see maybe the wrong power supply is up, or we have a power supply issue where maybe one power supply is not plugged in for some reason, or a cabling issue. Like we can fix all these little basic things right away.
Okay.
And then going
All right,
into
you just gave us a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So let's unpack this step by step, because I think that there's a lot of value to our audience of people that may be looking at things. So the first, what I took away is a couple of buzzwords I heard you say. First, you talked about telemetry, right? So I assume this means you've moved away from SNMP. You're not scraping CLI anymore.
Correct.
And you now have structured data to work with. Maybe is this some of the stuff that you're talking about?
We're not going to stream every single thing that the box is capable of giving us, but we're only getting the stuff that we care about. So yes, so we're literally looking at BGP state in real time. Like, is it up? Is it down? Is it established? Is it not? Is this port up? Is this port down? Is this hardware component temperature high, low? You know, fans, whatever. All the things that you have to think about that SNMP was probably doing before, but they were doing it at a polling rate of whatever, you know, the best you could get, and then never really like fast enough. So we basically try to make sure that we can build custom dashboards for different user types. So we have a data center technician kind of dashboard where they can see like, is everything connected properly? Is basic stuff ready? Then I have maybe more of a networking specific one where we're looking at BGP state for a bunch of connections, any sort of alarms, logs, security related things, like all that stuff is all coming through in our kind of unique dashboards that we're able to make.
Well, I think you're asking what the audience is asking. So right now we got our first audience question in, and it says, can you walk us through one of your most impactful operational tools you've built, and what specific challenge was it designed to solve?
Right. We have a lot. We have several now, but I'd say like one of the big things we're trying to do is remove the humans from the equation of like trying to push a configuration. We do a lot of change in our network. We do a fair amount of bare metal servers. We have a bunch of colocation customers that may want specific things changed from time to time. So we built a BGP kind of tool. So if a new customer is onboarding and they're going to speak BGP to us, ideally, we have a form that basically you'd fill out, like we fill out, like with their AS information. It's going to connect in real time to the switch. This is a really cool thing. So it's going to connect to our source of truth, figure out what we have available in inventory. We're going to sort based on maybe the type of port that the guy wants. If they want like a 100 gig port or a 400 gig port or a 10 gig port, no big deal. Like we'll basically figure out, you know, what switches we got available for that. And we're going to basically present possible BGP sessions, IPs for our side and the customer side, if nothing's been predetermined. And then we're going to go through a bunch of series of questions that will, a typical configuration would require for BGP, like, you know, basic AS, type of table they need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they want BFD, maybe they need some special community options. Like these are all like checkboxes. And basically the person will type out all this information on our end and then press submit, and then that will go and provision everything.
Provision live or provision this in like a virtual
We're
test
provisioning it live.
That sounds scary as hell the way you're describing that.
We're provisioning live because we need to set up a real environment. Like this customer is ready to rock and roll, and we have a high level of confidence that what we selected is actually truly free and not like already configured by something, because we have, again, like we can look at the state of the configuration, and if it matches what we're expecting, which is, you know, we have to do a little bit of thinking on our end. If it looks like it's a blank configuration, which it should be, because there's nothing configured on this interface, then we know that that's an actual free interface. and we'll provision everything. We're up and running, and the last thing we need to now do is run a cross connect for the customer. But once we press go, for example, now that session is now showing up in Grafana as not established. It's down, which is fine. It's in connect state, to be expected because nothing has been configured on the customer's end yet. But the beautiful thing is this tool that we built, while it's maybe originally conceived to be for the NOC team, we really want to push it down to the sales engineer, because we just feel like there's not a lot of mistakes you're going to make, because we're doing a lot of real-time checking, and you're only going to be able to provision something that is legitimately free and is actually ready to rock and roll. So it's pretty cool.
So it seems like we're getting a lot of questions. So I think we're hitting a topic that are interesting. So Peter asks, can you share an example of when your network data has directly informed or improved business decisions at OpenColo? So how is that data actually affecting the business, apparently?
So for me, it's really about operational efficiency. So we're a small team. There's not like 50 of us on the network side. So we need to do a lot with a lot of cool things without a lot of manual interactions. And we want to be fast about stuff. Like there should not be any decisions that are requiring like 10 people to get involved to set up something. Like we already know what we got. So I think about it like if you are trying to get a circuit with some provider, they always say like, oh, our typical time is 35 days. In my mind, I'm like, why does it take 35 days to turn up a circuit? Like, that's crazy. You either have the bandwidth or you don't. How do you not know if you don't have enough capacity from that location, especially if you did something small, like a 100 gig port or even a 10 gig port? You should have capacity already. So you should be able to bring up these things really quick, but the industry itself doesn't move quickly. So we're basically trying to figure out how do we move quickly, because customers are expecting something to happen pretty much instantly. Like we're building the order now and buy now mindset. Like I ordered it, it should be online like instantly. Why isn't it online?
So you chose to build these tools, right? I'm assuming Open Connect. Yeah, you talk about protocols and all this. So let's go through that build versus buy decision, because what you're describing is how you're using the tool and the business problem. Why did you feel the need to go build a tool to do this? What was there nothing shrink wrap that you could just buy?
I feel like, not really, because I feel like maybe individually you can maybe control a specific switch or a router like one at a time, but not holistically. Like I need maybe 4 or 5 devices spun up at the same time in order for me to have a resilient connection with my customer. So I'd rather not I just didn't really feel like there's enough custom. We wanted something custom, and we also wanted the flexibility to build it ourselves, because we know exactly what we want. And we're using a source of truth that's not like Netbox, it's something else. So we have to kind of do our own custom thing to kind of make those things work anyways. So there's not really something quote unquote off the shelf that can build it for us that I'm aware of. Maybe you can stand up the network from initial stand up, like, hey, out of the box, and you have spine leaf architecture, EVPN, whatever. Like you could probably have some sort of automation for that, but maybe you're not going to use the specific IPs that they defaulted to. So you want your own special IPs, subnetting. You want your own specific things. So in my mind, like we kind of had no choice but to make it ourselves. If we wanted to do all the other things we also have to do behind the scenes as well.
What about inter-vendor interoperability? You got Yang, GNMI, different vendors support this differently. So how did you evaluate who to use, and is it really ready for prime time? And can I have multiple vendors in your ecosystem?
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, we try to simplify as much as possible. So let's not get super fancy when we hand off to a customer per se. So we're just doing pure BGP. Or we're doing like a direct handoff, like here's a static route going to their end. If we're doing something super basic, like all those little things there is no vendor problems. in our design, because my handoff to my customer is like either a fiber handoff or maybe a copper connection. So it's nothing super fancy. Within our own environment, yeah, while we have a lot of Nokia stuff, we do have like some Aristas as well and a few other vendors. But generally speaking, they all work because we're doing a pure BGP play. So
that makes sense. So straight PGP, you got multiple vendors. How hard was it to find the skill set to go build this? Were there people around with the skill
yeah.
set? And then the second part of that question is, if your lead architect got hit by a bus or took another job tomorrow, how does this work next week?
Well, I'd have to leave because I'm the guy who's kind of helping to drive the stuff. Again, like we're a small team. So yeah. I mean, like we do a lot of processes in our organization. So we've documented the living hell out of everything that we do. I always go with the assumption is, hey, what happens if I am on vacation or one of my developer guys or one of the guys on the NOC who's maybe a little bit junior, like can they do this? And the answer is yes, they can. We also have a fallback. What if the tools just broke and the system got super corrupted or something terrible happened? You can still go back to programming it manually. Not ideal, but we have a good idea of what we need to do step by step. So we basically built this wonderful like playbook for all our stuff. We're not using Ansible, but the same idea. Like here's what's going to happen if you do X, Y, and Z. Because sometimes you have to like troubleshoot something weird if something didn't work out as expected. Now, I'd say 99% of the time when there's something that's unexpected, it's usually the client side where they maybe oops something small on their end. You're like, oh yeah, send me your configuration. Oh, here you go. You have you typoed. That's why we're not connecting. That's why we can't ping you. Yes, we have link, but we don't.
So when you were building this, so that sounds like a working tool. Were
Yeah.
there learning curves of things like to keep noise out of your data? I mean, there's a lot of telemetry you gather. You said earlier in this conversation that you're kind
Yeah.
of specific on what you take. So how
Yeah.
did you learn what was noise and what you wanted to listen to make this meaningful for your NOC and your other folks to work with?
Right. So we're doing subscriptions. So we're subscribing to certain paths. So we're very targeted versus like seeing everything. If we saw everything, it would be too much. Plus, I don't think the devices we have would work 100% if we send every single possible point, all the time. Like that doesn't make sense. So we're really just focusing in on the specifics that we need to see. And we do a lot of on change type of scenarios as well. Like BGP is usually up, so I don't need to look at it really and get a new value unless like it's not established. But for data flows and port, how much traffic's being pushed across certain things, like obviously that's coming in all the time, and light levels all the time, and hardware state for certain things is it's pretty much real time as well. But yeah, again, like it's targeted. It's not everything. It's not like you did SNMP and you're like, let me walk everything and I got everything. Like that would, we might be here for a while.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So where's the biggest impact been once this is up and running? I mean, I think we talked before. You told me
Yeah.
that you had folks quickly installing switches this morning as a drill, and they were
Yeah.
able to go find switches and put them in the network operation. And you described how that worked at the beginning of this interview. Where is this meeting the dollars? How's this helping your business?
It's all about recovery time. So like we did a drill that, it's like assume the worst case possible scenario, everything, we lost power, something crazy happened. What would you do? Now it came online, we lost a switch, like nothing's recovered. You got to manually do a bunch of stuff. That's probably the worst case scenario, but I want people to like know, what's the worst case scenario? Like how do we get stuff back online if something should fail in a bad way? So yeah, it's a work in progress, like on that specific drill. But generally speaking, like we don't really have like a single point of failure per se. So even if something were to die, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But yeah, for us, it's all about saving time. Like imagine like you got 200 switches that showed up on your dock. Like how would you get those online? Like what would be your process? How would you walk through how to bring them online quickly? Can you just plug them in and they would pull down a configuration, upgrade their firmware? And the answer is yes. We're for like ZTP, for example, like there's a question. We have, we're using CTP. We have Python scripts that are basically looking at source of truth. In fact, like for SR Linux specifically with Nokia, they had some example Python scripts that we started with, and then we totally customized them. It's open source, so we're like, hey, we're going to customize this for our own specific needs. We'll connect our source of truth. We'll match the serial number that we know because we inventoried the asset. We have to create an asset once we receive it. So we have an asset, we have a serial number matching the specific switch, and then we basically pull down a config and build all our tooling, all our streaming stuff, all our ACLs, all our whatevers that you need to do to make your network functional, and then establish and create the BGP sessions that we're expecting. And then it's a matter of just getting everything connected properly from that point. So from us, like, it's pretty awesome because like we really were able to do this super quickly, like from nothing to online within literally the same day.
All right, so we're getting a couple technical questions, and they're actually going where I wanted to go. I was going to ask about GNMI encoding, but I think Michael Bowen's got some specifics about what protocols you're using, and are you pushing the data, or a little bit specific. So maybe you can address that one first, and then we'll go to the next question.
Yeah. So for like for the CTP initial configuration, we're just basically pulling down a configuration and it's getting pushed in 100%. For like after it's online and we're making changes, adding customers, changing customer settings or turning down things, we're using GNMI. So we're basically pushing a GNMI push in there, which is great for us. Like I actually really like it because in other options, maybe like worst case option, it would be like you're going to emulate a CLI instance and SSH, and you'll submit, push some code into it for a minor change. But what happens if there's a break? Like if there's a typo, if there's something, like maybe part of it got committed, but not all of it. So with GNMI was pretty cool because once you submit or commit basically or push it, it's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't work, nothing worked, which is pretty cool. So
but on that line, right? So
Yeah.
you're a boutique shop, but let's assume you got like a 10x increase of customers and you grew this thing overnight. What breaks first when we scale this thing up, or does it not break?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I mean, we probably have like maybe 200 or so instances of a lot of things. So I think from our scale perspective, as we add new devices, maybe what we'll probably run into is we might need different collectors. We probably scale up the collections. We might have to have separate instances of collectors and certain instances of Grafana per se. Maybe if we went like 10x, that would be a lot. And that's okay. Like that's okay because that's still a scale. It's a scale thing. So you just need a little copy paste of what we already have. Maybe we have wing 1, room 2, pod 1, whatever. And then we can maybe integrate all that stuff into a single dashboard from different sources of data. Not a big deal on that. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much of a change because our topology, our design is pretty cookie cutter for at least how we design things. And we're not architecturally like it can scale really, really nice. And if we had say 500 switches all coming online at the same time, because they're brand new stuff, maybe, realistically, would they all come on at the same time? Probably not. So you probably have like 50 coming on at once and then another 50 or, in between everything. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just theoretical. I just kind of seeing where how mature it is kind of where I was going with the question.
Yeah. I mean, for us,
because you built a lot of
well.
this on the fly, right? So I just want to figure out the maturity of it.
Yeah, for us, it's working fantastic, and we've been doing this type of design for maybe 4 years now. So it's working very well for at least the Nokia stuff. Like the more legacy stuff, like it's still stuck in the past. So we're not looking back. We're looking forward. So anything that we're looking at, we want the GNMI configuration option. We want push pull. We want like subscription based stuff. We want real time without taking a massive hit or a license fee or some extra stuff. Like we want it to be simple.
All right. So there was a BGP question that we walked over that we didn't get to, and it says, what about visibility considering a convergence of domains, IP and optic? What's your position on that?
Convergence of domains and IP and optical. Yeah, I mean, like So like for the optical side, like for me, it's very basic for the optical side. We have a baseline that we determine is our quality of light in the environment. So for example, like a long time ago, we stood up another data center, got some new equipment. We're like, this is awesome, everything's great. But then we didn't realize that like this is a learning thing. We didn't realize that normal on the light level isn't normal if the distance is pretty close and you have like 5 dB of light loss. Like that's not unacceptable. Like we should know exactly what we're expecting in our environment. So like we have all these nice like optical real-time reporting as we're kind of standing things up. And so if we're looking at a specific number, like that number has to be in the quote unquote green. So it's pretty cool. And then if it's not perfect, then the technician who's actually connecting things up will get an alarm as well. Like we integrate into Slack, for example, so all the stuff is streaming in to Slack as well when we're standing things up. And if it's not good, we're getting alarms. And that technician's like, oh shoot, let me clean the optic, let me clean the fiber, and hopefully one side is dirty, and you'll get good light.
Hopefully it's not dirty, but maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, well, the assumption is when it's brand new, it's clean, but it's not. So you got to ABC, always be cleaning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And the GNMI, what protocol or how did you do it? Are you using that's human readable or machine language? How did you decide to deploy? What are you doing there? He's like JSON, like how
Yeah.
are you set up?
Yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately, GNMI is not the most human readable thing. So you really had to like, we had to do a lot of manual like learning on that experience. Like, so, like we looked at, I think there's Container Lab. Basically, they have a bunch of examples in there. So we kind of looked at what was at least for the streaming side, like here's the paths, Yang path models, like figuring out all those paths. Like that took a little bit of energy and effort. But then we got some tricks. We figured out some tricks along the way. We talked to good people. The community's super responsive as well. So we were able to like work with some real industry people to
The
say,
community
hey,
like Discord, or where would others on this listening want to reach out to the community?
like there's at least for a Container Lab, like there's a Discord channel. Again, that's really helpful. There's lots of people in that channel that are willing to help other people. So just post your questions, and ideally you'll get someone to kind of chime in. So it's been great. I get to learn meet a lot of interesting people. Like there's a guy who actually works at Nokia who created the GNMIC protocol and gave it to OpenConfig. So we became friends, and it's kind of nice to message the guy who created this stuff because he knows probably better than most. Even though maybe the community is managing.
That's fair. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
see personally, I've seen the community pretty active, so it's kind of loaded. I do see
Yeah.
people answering. I guess one thing that I would wonder if I was listening to this and one of your peers is you built this out of necessity because it was a tool that you wanted, the cost structure worked.
Yeah.
Do you see this stack being your long-term operation, or do you think this will be something commercial in the future?
Yeah, I doubt we're gonna like make a commercial product out of our own specific setup, but I could see, if there's someone who wants to build something like this, they should, like, and that would be amazing. I would be DM me later if you're actually going to build something cool around pushing all this configuration stuff, because I would be completely interested in betaing it with you, or at least help developing something.
That sounds like fun. The second question that the vendors probably don't like so much, but if you're using OpenConfig, GNMI, have you reduced vendor lock-in? Are you a little bit more flexible than you might have been in another environment? Is that a consideration here?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you want to like, I would love to not have any vendor lock-in as much as possible. So, but for me, like big picture, it's nice when the vendor supporting the OS, and the hardware, you have one throat to choke if there is a problem versus a pure white box play and then another NOS. Like who's at fault when there's a problem.
All right. And then as we get kind of towards our time, help me understand how this has helped your customers, or what this means to one of your customers having this infrastructure in place. How's their experience changed?
it really just, once we can see things before there's a problem. Like, it's not a break fix. It's oh, we're noticing something that's out of spec. We need to plan a maintenance real quick with the customer to plan something versus, sorry, customer, we had an unexpected outage. Or, those are basically the kind of the big plus, the big wins, is not being able to bring customers down unless there is a problem. And there shouldn't be a problem unless like there's a equipment failure or a fiber cut.
Understood. So I guess those are the conversation I wanted to have. Are there any other audience questions people want to drop into the chat as we're going here that we're happy to cover? We still have a few minutes we can. Happy to go there. I guess, Scott, from your opinion, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from this deployment? I mean, you went from 0 to full speed pretty quick. What are some learning lessons you had?
Yeah, it's spend a lot of time thinking about the workflow from start to finish to life cycle, and how can you accelerate all of those things, and then more importantly, how can you exponentially scale without having to add more staff. So if you can solve those things, which is what this solution's been able to allow us to do, then you can keep with your A team and basically just do whatever was thrown at you. As customers grow, or we need to upgrade certain things. The beauty of what we have today is, if I have a 100 gig switch today, swapping in for a 100 gig, or a 400 gig or 800 gig option in the future isn't going to be too much of a big forklift. Yes, it's another.
And you mentioned earlier, before we end, I think it'd be remiss not to cover this. You said ZTP, zero touch provisioning, and you described it. Is that a reality today?
That is a reality today. And in fact, if you want to go secure, you can do secure ZTP too. Just that is a real reality, at least for us. Like, it is imperative that you think about how you're going to load every single switch, from maybe just simply as upgrading the latest firmware or the firmware that you want to run, to getting a configuration that you can actually go into productions with. If you can go that mindset, then you're going to cut out a lot of secondary configuration steps.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights with our audience on the live event. Thank you so much for being a guest today, Scott.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
And if you enjoyed this content, you enjoyed the conversation with Scott, please don't hesitate. Ping him on LinkedIn. Keep the dialogue going. If you got questions, ask in LinkedIn. We'll keep the dialogue going. We do have our next session already scheduled. So if you're liking this kind of content, we've got a session scheduled for the 21st of May. Dirk Kalkman will be our guest. He's NLIX, and the conversation point is going to be IXP's evolution and where they're going. So it's a great conversation. If you want to be a part of it, if you want to send us some questions or thoughts ahead of time, and don't forget to recommend guests. We're looking for folks. I don't care what vendor they use, as long as they've got something timely and interesting to share with our audience. We'd love to have them on the show. So feel free to DM me directly with ideas or suggestions, and I will take them. Thank you again for your time, and we'll see you again next time on Terabit Talks. Bye for now.
See ya.